dishonesty, the gibberish that the man spun out, and the immorality, it is surprising that he still, even after his death, is held in high esteem. Of course, the massage thing did not come out until now, but with all the sexual misconduct that was exposed while he was still living, he was still held in high esteem in the Christian world, both by the laity and by the academia. So my first question to you is, tell me, what makes a lay believer cling to a scoundrel like Ravi Zacharias? What is the psychology that drives this gullibility, that scoundrels like this get away by doing anything?
Well, so there's two camps involved here. One would be the person in the pew, the relatively unsophisticated person who wants to take apologetics with Ravi and who has read Ravi's books, which are not written from an academic point of view, who finds that they've come to believe more strongly in Jesus because of Ravi's books. These people have a great deal invested in Ravi being a good man. There's this, I'm absolutely not an expert in the psychology of religious belief or the psychology of abuse within organizations. I know that there's work going on in a field with a phenomenon called betrayal blindness. I've communicated with a professor in Oregon, Jennifer Freyd, about this, where within organizations, once people enter into a relationship of intense trust, and that relationship of trust can be very important to them, especially in a community where this is their social life, this is their social system. This is not just an organization I go to play Scrabble on Wednesday nights. This is my tribe. And when you find that the leader has betrayed you, it's very easy to fall into what's called betrayal blindness. And I have to think that that's a big part of how Ravi was able to get away with this. I mean, he was fairly brazen with this stuff that he did in the massage scene in Georgia. And I've studied Ravi for 5 years, and it wasn't until a few weeks ago that I even knew he was in the massage business. Somehow, this was kept in such a low profile that people like me didn't even know about it. So, and then there's also I've had people on YouTube and in social media and Twitter say that they feel that their faith is crumbling because of what they've learned about Ravi. And that's really unfortunate, because the fact that Ravi was a dishonest, deceptive man doesn't mean his religion is false, right? I mean, I think his religion is false, but if my physics professor turns out to be a child abuser, it doesn't mean I stop believing in the law of gravity, right? Ravi can be a scoundrel and Christianity can still be true. So I don't know that anybody should let this destroy their faith, unless they put their faith in Ravi. And that's a big mistake. Right. There also, Esther, is a lot of money in the Ravi Zacharias business. Last I checked, he was bringing in $40 million a year just in donations. This is not to count, this doesn't count the money he makes on his books and that he brings into to places with his speaking arrangements, the prestige and the power that he brings to other ministers who invite him to come speak. There's a huge investment in Ravi being a clean guy. And so I think that's part of the resistance. And one of the most painful lessons for me in this whole thing, I have not had bad feelings about evangelicals. They were all nice to me in my Christian days. And I thought, as much as I disagree with them on politics and theology, they're decent people. And most of them are, but there's a systematic corruption at the highest levels of American evangelism. And Ravi Zacharias gives us a beautiful teaching opportunity around that. He fooled everybody all the way up to the Vice President of the United States, even though scholars have known, Christian scholars have known for 20 years now that he was dishonest about his credentials. Nobody called him on it.
Right, right. I was just coming to that. So that was my second question. Why are his fellow Christian workers that are sitting on the top rung of the apologetic industry, apologetic ladder, quiet? Because I can understand the code of silence in other industries, like the entertainment industry or the corporate. But isn't it surprising that a community that claims to be the custodians of morality and integrity in the world do not call out the charlatan among them, knowing very well that he is a fraudster? And you pointed at this. There's a verse in the Bible, right, that says, "Reprove the sinner among you publicly." I think it's in the book of First Timothy in the
First
New
Timothy
Testament.
3:20 or First Timothy 3:20, I believe it is. Yeah.
Right. So why should these evangelists be taken to be men of God, and why should they be taken so seriously? They're the first and foremost violators of biblical teachings. So, what right do they have to preach the very Bible that they violate? And on this note, I think every self-respecting Christian should denounce such exploitation of gullibility by these people.
Yeah, I think the big lesson here is, I'm not saying the evangelical business is worse than the tobacco companies or worse than a cutthroat capitalist corporate enterprise, but they aren't any better. And we would do well to stop thinking that because they're religious people, that they're going to behave better when it comes to the things that really matter. It's easy to love your neighbor if it means visiting them or helping them out at certain times. It's much harder to live true to your Christian principles when it comes to matters like money, your reputation, and sex. And on that front, the evangelical industry has really not done a very noble job. And we just shouldn't expect them to be any better than anybody else.
So, is there anybody at all in this evangelical industry that have called out on this charlatan?
I can count them on, I think, fewer than these fingers, but yes, there have been. Um, there are some well-established academics who have written in their blogs and been willing to speak to the media about their concerns about Ravi's conduct and about his credential fraud. And then there's some bloggers, and as I mentioned, Warren Throckmorton, the psychology professor who got the apology from Ravi in 2018. But unfortunately, there has not been much courage shown by the evangelical business world as a whole. It's been disappointing to see the cowardice. I have been in touch with people who know a lot. I've been in touch with people who were at Ravi's ministry, employed there, and they are willing to make cryptic comments criticizing a former boss on Twitter, but they don't have the courage to say, and by the way, this boss was Ravi Zacharias. I had a New Testament PhD student email me, or I had some engagement with him on Twitter a few months ago. He posted something very critical about Ravi, and it was clearly about Ravi. And I pointed out in a follow-up tweet that this is about Ravi. And he contacted me and asked me if I could take that down because he was afraid of what this would say to his colleagues in the New Testament field. So we shouldn't buy the line about Christians being brave enough to face down the Roman lions, right? They're just people like we are. And let's keep that in mind. Good people for the most part, but they're capable of cowardice and dishonesty when it comes to the important matters.
Was it all justified by saying, ends justify the means, and also it's got a word. It's called pious fraud or a noble lie.
Yeah. I think that when you're in a ministry like Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, you that becomes your world, that becomes your community. The work they do becomes your passion. You become to think that that's so important that God's principles need to we can't let God get in the way of this. God should just let us know what's best for his kingdom right now. And what's best for his kingdom right now is to deny and to lie. And I think that becomes the way. I think that's probably what's going on at Ravi Zacharias' ministry right now. They're having meetings. They've probably contacted their lawyers, and they are not going to tell the truth because it's just going to be bad for God's kingdom.
Yes. Yep.
I could be wrong. I've 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 given them my information. They know what the evidence. They know that I'm not the only one who has this evidence. They know that these witnesses have not just spoken to me, and they know that Ravi was sexually inappropriate, even though he made a big deal in his December 17th press release at the close of his lawsuit, the sexting lawsuit. He said, I have never once been unfaithful to my wife, Margie, and I have a long-standing policy of not being alone with a woman other than my wife and my daughters, not in a car, not in a restaurant, not anywhere. He didn't mention in a massage booth. And his ministry knows this, and I'm still hoping for the best. And I'm actually holding off on my story to let others investigate, and also in the hopes that I won't need to put my video up because his ministry will do the right thing. I'm not interested in the fame or the salacious exposure of the skullduggery, and I get to be the one who exposed it. I would like them to admit that this happened and to do what any decent organization would do and apologize to the victims. So
Why is that so important to you?
I feel bad. I feel very bad for the victims, and I also feel very bad about what Ravi has done to the God debates. I'm starting a class next week with the theology school I have attended on and off for many years. I'm very passionate about the God debates. I want to debate cleanly and fairly. My class next week is on proofs for the existence of God with a wonderful Dominican priest who I've taken classes with for a long time. I love those discussions. And when someone like Ravi Zacharias comes along with fake credentials and a deceptive personality, it just makes the debates much harder to happen. It just muddies the water, and it is a violation of the protocols that we really need in order to have meaningful exchanges about whether God exists. So I get a little excited about that and disappointed when I see the effect Ravi has had on integrity in the evangelical world. Mm-hmm.
So I get asked this question a lot. What has Ravi's conmanship or his sexual misconduct got to do with the message that he has about Jesus and his salvation? So, how would you respond to that?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is it probably doesn't have a whole lot to do, because Ravi could be telling the truth, but he doesn't really believe it, or he's got too much of an ego to actually put his beliefs into practice. I don't know. But there's one problem that Ravi really presents for Christianity, as I see it. The blood of Jesus is supposed to have a powerful transformative effect on people. If you read the book of 1 John, there's strong claims about how it can make you free from sin. It can help you resist temptation. So one would think that salvation, having a conversion experience, brings about significant changes in your life that allow you to resist exactly the kind of stuff that Ravi Zacharias was unable to resist. So in that very ironic way, Ravi's life is a counterexample to the truth that he spent to the claims that he tried to spend his life making, right? Ravi is an example of the blood of Jesus not doing its magic.
I like how you put it. And I also want to add that if you look at the way Christianity was spread, I can only say that the message of Christianity itself couldn't have spread if there was no fraud and fakery involved in it. In other words, the message was so weak that it needed the crutches of lies and charlatanism for it to live, for it to survive for this long. So would you agree with that? Why would its representatives, the evangelists or the popes or the Catholic priests, had to resort to this kind of forgeries and fraud from the beginning? I'm talking about from the time Christianity was being formulated down to our century. So why would they have to resort to this kind of pseudo intellectualism for rationale? For it to make sense, is the Christian message, is the message of Jesus so powerless, so weak?
Well, there's a lot there, and we're talking now about 2,000 years of history, and I don't know that the earliest proponents of Christianity, the disciples and the apostles and the church in Acts chapter 2, I don't know if they were deceiving people. I think there was self-deception, but certainly you're right that later on, once Christianity became an institution, it used not just deception, but cannons and battleships to convert. And there is a lot of dishonesty happening in it. And if I have to think, if someone were a real believer in the power in that Jesus rose and is alive, they wouldn't need to help God along with puffing the claims. They would just lay out what they know to be true or what they believe to be true and let the Holy Spirit do its thing. But you see, I don't think there is such a thing as God or the Holy Spirit. So I can understand why people need to do a little bit extra to get the message out.
Yes.
But it would be nice if they acknowledged that. I knew missionaries in Southeast Asia who I think were really people of integrity. They made considerable sacrifices going out to live in not very plush settings in Southeast Asia. There's very noble Catholic priests probably in every village in the world who are there not for anything other than to carry out what they sincerely believe the gospel to be. So I really don't want the Ravi message to be seen as me casting aspersions on all Christians. I have many Christian scholars who I'm in close contact with. I love them dearly. I respect them. They're good people. And I want to keep having a good, honest discussion with them. And I don't want people like Ravi Zacharias coming in and pretending to be Oxford scholars and then debating me and cheating in the discussion. That's really what he was about with this whole credential thing and with much of his life. He cheated. And that's unfortunate. And I should say also, Esther, that it's very unfortunate that this latest sex evidence didn't come up until after he died. I did not control the timing. I suspect that Ravi would be very interested in hearing about this and in trying somehow to respond to it. But it came up too late. And that has to do with the people who reported this to me. It had nothing to do with me wanting to wait so that Ravi couldn't respond. So it is unfortunate.
Yeah. It's so disheartening. It's sad that Ravi continues to bring in that kind of money even from his grave.
You know, one of his big publishers, HarperCollins Christian Publishing, I don't know if they're the biggest Christian publisher, but they're certainly one of them. I was in touch with them after Ravi's lawsuit. I provided them a massive amount of documentation, and their associate general counsel contacted me and said he will be looking at my material and he will get back to me in a couple of weeks. A couple of weeks later, he emailed me and said, "No comment, have a nice day." 4 months later, HarperCollins Christian Publishing announced a new book contract for Ravi Zacharias, called Jesus Through Eastern Eyes. And this is just one of those disappointing but important lessons that don't assume that just because they've got the name Christian in their publishing company, that they have any higher ethical standards than secular publishing. In fact, Christian publishing, it seems to me, has much lower standards. In the secular world, if you make up lies about schools you started for children in Afghanistan, and you're discovered, your book contracts get canceled, your speaking tours get canceled, Oprah Winfrey will come out and lambast you. But in the Christian world, they seem to have a much higher tolerance for that. Right? That's my experience.
So is it because there are just a handful of them, you can count them on your fingers, just a handful of apologists bringing in that kind of moolah? Is it because they don't have many? So even if the one that comes by and is able to write, is able to eloquently present the false Christian message, so whoever comes by like that, they just take him regardless of his character?
I think it's that. I wouldn't think so. I would just be guessing. I don't know what their motives are, but it seems to me like Ravi had a wonderful package. He was a publisher's dream. He had the credentials, he had the speaking tours, the massive audience, and to let his now documented deceptions get in the way of his book contracts would just be too expensive. And they decided to just go forward with it. And are there other people who could have filled his shoes? Well, it would be hard because he created very big fake shoes for himself. And it worked to the benefit of HarperCollins Christian Publishing and Zondervan Publishing and all the other publishers who've probably made a lot of money off Ravi Zacharias and will continue to make a lot of money off Ravi Zacharias.
Right. It's just another business organization
With a religiously themed webpage.
Right. So, Steve, what is your agenda, and where do you plan to go with this study on Ravi Zacharias?
My agenda, my plan, my hope is that in about a week or so, this story will be out, and professional Christian journalists will now realize that they have to take this seriously and publish it, and the truth about Ravi Zacharias will be known, and I will be able to wash my hands of him and get back to things that I'm much more interested in doing, like my philosophy studies and my music business. But if that doesn't happen, I'll be in on this for the long haul. I'm willing to put as much time, as many years as it takes to get the truth out about how this con man was able to be so successful with colleagues who knew he was a dishonest man, Christian colleagues, powerful Christian academics who knew he was a deceptive man. How did he get away with that? And I think that's a significant enough story that if the religious press doesn't take it up, or some professional, reputable media doesn't take it up, then I'll keep at it. But I'd really like to stop soon.
Okay. Did you say music business? Did I hear you say music business?
Yes, I'm a part-time lawyer and a part-time philosophy student and a part-time musician. I sing very badly, but I play guitar and I play banjo, and my field is instrumental fingerstyle guitar and banjo. My main interest is old-time American music and Celtic music, Irish and Scottish, Breton music from France, that sort of stuff.
That's
It's a
interesting.
big passion for my life. A couple of years ago, I published a book on my gospel arrangements. I love gospel music. I tear up on Christmas Eve singing Silent Night with my mother. That's not gospel, but it's religious music. I have a deep passion for religious music, especially the old time American gospel songs and the music by Bach. And I spend a lot of time working on my music. And I have to tell you that the past week of Ravi Zacharias revelations has taken me away from my guitar, and I'm not happy about that.
Okay, okay. I would like to end with a quote from your book, and I really like how you put it. It says, Christianity is not something that can be shaken off with a dose of reason, for reason cannot usually rescue people from situations that reason did not get them into in the first place. So no amount of exposing these charlatans or the Catholic priests would take away a Christian from his faith, because it's not rationality and logic that put them in that place. So I have said this many times in so many ways, and I say it again, viewers. Christianity is an emotional religion. By emotional, I mean it's a religion that people walk into with a need in their lives, in anticipation that their need will be fulfilled. Need could range anywhere from financial, psychological, or a cure from illness. So it has nothing to do with reason. So I definitely agree with that quote of yours. It's not reason that took them there. So it's not reason that's going to bring them out of.
Yeah, I agree with that quote. I think I stole that, either that message or that quote. I mean, that's not something that I came up with, but I agree with it. And like most things, there are exceptions. For example, I would say there are some Christians who are very committed to disciplined reason. Thomas Aquinas is very much a rational thinker. Whether one agrees with his methods or not, at least he's trying not to make this about emotion. But I think you're right that if we were to generalize, that quote would apply to a lot of religious believers, Christian or not. I think sadly it also applies to a lot of atheists, but we all need to do a little bit better and be vigilant about how we are forming our beliefs, and are we getting carried away with the emotional side. That's a very important message, and I think that's one thing that Ravi Ji has taught us in a way he didn't want, but he taught us that.
Steve, if people would like to reach you with questions, so what are your social media handles, and what's the website or your email ID? Would you like to share that with our viewers?
Yes, thank you for asking that, Esther. But before I give my information, I would like to, if any of your viewers want to do some research on this themselves, there's always Google, but there's a very good Christian blog called the Spiritual Sounding Board. And they're not there so much to preach, they're there to document. And they're very focused on church abuse, and they have a wonderful section on Ravi Zacharias. It's the best thing on the internet for sort of a clearinghouse for if you're interested in his suicide threat, his credentials. It's all there. So the Spiritual Sounding Board is a really great place to go for that. If you want to contact me, I'm happy to hear from people. My website is raviwatch.com. That's RAVI watch.com. I learned that there is a Ravi watch, which is a watch. So don't confuse me with that company. Don't email them about Ravi Zacharias, but raviwatch.com. And I would be happy to answer questions and hear what people think about their own spiritual walk.
So, viewers, it's not my intention to destroy the faith of lay believers that want to remain in it, despite all the information that is available in the public domain. But this is a war against the truth claims and the exclusivist ideology that is pushed by the proselytizers. So I will leave you with that, and I thank you for watching. I will see you in another episode. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for sharing all that you did.
Thank you, Esther.